Welcome to Wellsprings of Faith. My name is Father Jürgen Liias. I am a Roman Catholic priest serving as a senior priest on the staff of St. Patrick's Church in Stoneham. We tape this program where I live here in this town of Melrose, Massachusetts. Normally we interview individuals about their journey in faith. Both our guests today have already done that and have shared their journey of faith, but they've become two good friends and comrades, you might say, in the work of the church in the public square. And I thought it'd be interesting to have a conversation with them about the challenges of being a Christian, fighting for Christian values and a Christian view of the kingdom of God in the public square. So I'd like to welcome Rob Bradley. He's a dear old friend. We've known each other from battles in the pro-life movement for many years. He's a executive director of a wealth management company in all of New England here. Apart from his financial work, which has been very prosperous, he has poured his life out in so many ways, which he'll share, to build up a Christian culture around here. And then Peter Wolfgang is our second guest. He is presently the executive director of the Family Institute of Connecticut and has been very, very active in family and pro-life issues with the legislature and the public culture and the schools and the political systems in Connecticut. So welcome.
Father, it's good to be back with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Jürgen.
And thank you as a priest for to say to lay Christians, because the real work of the church is laity. The church is 99% laity, and if you're not out there doing the work, then all our preaching and hanging around at the temple, so to speak, is not going to be of much use. It's because hopefully that you're fed to go in the world and proclaim Christ in word and deed in the culture.
Someone asked Cardinal Newman, what do you think of the laity? And he said, we'd look pretty silly without them.
And that's absolutely true. So anyway, Rob, I shared you first. Talk a little bit about, because you have, there's not one thing you've done. You've done so many things.
Sure.
And first of all, maybe why you've done it all.
Yeah.
And
now
you're 80 years old, so time's
and
running out.
Very soon, 81 years old, 81 in September. But about 40 years ago, my wife and I had a dramatic conversion to Christ in London, of all places, in a Anglican church, evangelical, charismatic church, and it really changed our life dramatically. And I moved back from London to Boston to start a bank, actually, in 1985. But I was, this was a revolutionary sort of change in my life. And one of the people who influenced me greatly in London, not personally, but reading about his biography, was William Wilberforce. And William Wilberforce, of course, was the one who fought 30 years to stop the slave trade first and then slavery. And I've always loved public policy, and I've loved politics and the culture and that. So when I got back to Boston and I started this bank, I was very much influenced by Focus on the Family by James Dobson. And it seemed to me that one of the great crises in America for our culture and for our country was the decay and destruction of the family. So I wrote a letter to Dobson, and I said, we desperately need something in Massachusetts. We need an institute there. And before I knew it, there were two people on my doorstep, two young men, and they began to help us start Massachusetts Family Institute. And but the reason behind all of that to me is Psalm 33:12. And Psalm 33:12 says, "Blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord." And those nations who have sought the Lord's face and followed God, their society, their community, their nation has been greatly blessed. And it seemed to me that we were losing that sort of sense of Christian worldview, and that people were no longer looking to Christ. And really ever since 1989 or 1990, I've been out there trying to encourage that the Christian worldview be retained and the people seek God's face.
And you certainly have done a wonderful job. I mean, there within Christian history and there have been different approaches to the culture. Some have been more isolationist, sort of like the tradition. Not that it's bad, but the witness, like the Amish, to be separate and to live a separate life. But clearly, to another aspect, which has been more true of mainline Protestantism and Catholicism, is no, we are to be engaged the culture, and you certainly have done that. Now I know you grew up a Catholic, and were always interested in the pro-life movement and committed to that, but now you have decided to literally, and you don't get much pay for serving the Lord, whether in the church or outside the church.
Well,
but you've decided to work in the public square. Talk a little bit about the work of.
So my story does overlap somewhat with Rob's when he references focus on the family and Dr. James Dobson. You heard Rob talk about his role in founding the Massachusetts Family Institute. I'm the head of the sister organization in Hartford, the Family Institute of Connecticut, which was founded at about the same time. It was founded in 1989. Focus on the family, Dr. James Dobson, again, he understood that the crisis of our times, as far back as the 1970s, was the crisis in family life, which in the 70s meant divorce and abortion. And it's only metastasized since then, right? We've got so many other even more or equally grievous attacks on the family. And so by the end of the 80s, you had the story that Rob just relayed, which I think was being repeated in several states, including Connecticut, where there were local people saying, we need like some sort of local version of focus on the family to fight these things. So in my state, it was people like Pastor Earl Imsweiler and an Eastern Orthodox layman named Rich Kendall and others that came together and formed the Family Institute of Connecticut. Now, where I intersect with all this was, as I said when you interviewed me in a previous episode, I had, coming off of partial birth abortion, I was already pro-life, but that issue in particular moved me to conservatism in general. And so, I was in law school, and I wanted to, when I graduated law school, I wanted to go down to Washington and work for the Family Research Council and just give my life to that. I didn't know that there was something local like that in Connecticut. And I read an article in our local paper, and I discovered the existence of the Family Institute of Connecticut. And for me, as I was becoming more and more orthodox in my faith, more conservative in my politics, around 94 or 95, there was a cover article in Catholic World Report about James Dobson and why Catholics should love this guy and why Catholics should be working with this guy. And they were singing my tune. And the local Christian radio station, and there was no Catholic equivalent. I mean, James Dobson was it, man. He was the only game in town. There were other groups in that era, the conservative Christian thing, the Ralph Reed thing, whatever that was called, Christian Coalition.
Christian Coalition,
but nothing I thought was on the level of focus on the family. And I was correct, because they're the ones that have real longevity and staying power, and I think have had the biggest impact on our culture. And I was listening to their radio station, their daily radio show on our local evangelical station out of Middletown, Connecticut, WIHS, and listening, and I was a news junkie, so I'm reading the newspapers, I'm watching the evening news, but you listen to James Dobson every night, and it's like you're living behind the Iron Curtain secretly in your cellar with a shortwave radio, listening to Radio Free Europe, because James Dobson is telling you stuff that you're not hearing anywhere else, like what happened today at the U.S. Senate with Rick Santorum and the fight on partial birth abortion, or are we going to boycott Disney because of their anti-family policies? You're not reading this stuff anywhere else. I was so impressed by the man. And then in the early 2000s, around the time I became an attorney, I learned about the Family Institute of Connecticut. I reached out, and it was around that time that the marriage fight arrived in Connecticut, same-sex marriage. And I was a district deputy for the Knights of Columbus, a volunteer position. But I reached out to Family Institute, which was a restart at the time. They were just really sort of getting off the ground again. And I came up with the idea of a petition drive that would combine the evangelicals and the Catholics, that the Knights of Columbus would be key in this, and the Catholic bishops, where all the priests in all the Catholic parishes in Connecticut would read a letter from the pulpit during the homily saying, look, same-sex marriage is coming to Connecticut at the legislature, help us fight it. please sign your name to a petition after Mass. The knights will be stationed in the back with clipboards. And we collected tens of thousands of signatures out of that, about 100,000. And because of that, same-sex marriage never did come about through the legislature. We stopped it for a decade. It was imposed on us by the courts, as they eventually did on the federal level.
Yeah, so let me just interject here so that, Mass Family Institute started in 1991. And as you said, it was primarily about fatherless families, and it was about divorce and all these things. And then, and life, the life issue. But it then morphed into these other issues, these hot button issues, particularly sexuality, homosexuality, homosexual marriages and all this. So in 2003, I don't know if you remember, but the Massachusetts Supreme Judicial Court, the first one in the country, pronounced that same-sex marriage was okay. And our organization worked with others for 5-6 years to try to get a vote, just to have the people vote in Massachusetts on the issue. Many other states, there are like 31 other states, put the marriages between one man and one woman into either the Constitution or they passed laws. And so there was a big movement. And in Massachusetts, we had the largest signature drive in the history of the state. 170,000 signatures to get to get the people to vote, have a democracy as opposed to the courts. And of course, we lost that fight. The legislature would never let us get it through.
I know, they kept
and it was outrageous.
Of course, the interesting thing is, and part of the reason I wanted to have you guys talk about a lot of this stuff is, something like adoption was really an effort to help marriages. And a kind of a pastoral, you'd say pastoral education.
And raising children.
Right.
Sure, yeah.
And then you discover it's not that easy, just like an isolated way to help people in their marriages. The insidiousness of the cultural transformation.
That's right.
So the toxicity which was corroding marriages was present in our schools, in our public square. The courts now are imposing value systems that are contrary. You realize that it's not just about us doing a nice pastoral educational program to help our people. You need to be a warrior in the public square.
Yeah, and so so the further step, here we are 15 years later, every major hospital in Massachusetts, now it's a city of hospitals. It's known for its medical care globally. Every hospital, when a child is born in Boston, what does the birth certificate say? It no longer says male or female. It literally says, at the Mass General Hospital, it says the gender assigned to you at birth.
Yeah.
So we've morphed now from this,
cracks, intellectual insanity.
And
to your point, Father, and this is how we got from what Rob was talking about in the 90s to the stuff that we're fighting about. To your point about, it's sort of like imagine you're a school teacher. Somewhere out west in the 1800s, you're in a little sort of one house, one room brick schoolhouse, and you want to teach the children. That's what you want to do. But you have these hostile forces, Indians or something, that are always trying to burn down the schoolhouse. Well, you'd like to be a teacher, but you've got to be a fireman. You'd prefer to, and this goes to Rob's point, like in the 1990s, there was a growing consensus on both the left and the right that the divorce revolution from the 70s, the thing that caused James Dobson to found Focus on the Family, that these were bad things. Like even very liberal scholars were like, oh gosh, we've got the social science now. We know that children do best in a home with both the mom and a dad. And that's what groups like Massachusetts Family Institute and Family Institute of Connecticut were focused on. But then you hit the 21st century, now you've got the same-sex marriage issue, and in order to have that, you have to deny that children need both a mom and a dad. So we went from being teachers to we had to become firemen. And then to Rob's last point there, how much have we been proven correct where we warned that if you have same-sex marriage, it's not going to stop there.
It's a slippery slope.
Yeah, so now we live in a world where it's, where it doesn't say male or female.
And I'll give you another example in Massachusetts, how it's so bad. There are 3 communities in Massachusetts now where the city councils and the selectmen have endorsed polyamorous relationships. Now, polyamorous relationships are sexual relationships between any number of people. It can be 4 people or 6 people or 10. And you have places like Cambridge and Somerville and Arlington, those 3, where they have literally endorsed, any number of group of people to have a relationship,
Remember when they told us this wouldn't happen? Oh, you're scaremongering. But what's the magic of the number 2? If not 2, why not 3 men? Why not, anything?
Right, but and I might say that because we don't have a huge amount of time, but Connecticut is very much the same as Massachusetts in terms of we are in a cultural battle where we are, the broader culture is anti-Christian, and it's fiercely anti-Christian, and it's relentlessly secular. So Christians are discriminated against in many different ways, and if you were to write in the New Boston Post or something like that, as you have in that brilliant article, but you didn't quite get to the point of saying, there is a God. Marriage is between a man and a woman, and this is sinful in God's eyes. That you would be canceled, and you would have people standing in front of your house throwing things at your house.
That's the thing. It's not like even just a battle of ideas. It's the totalitarian mentality.
Right, and the government taking the side.
And the government is the totalitarian police enforcing this stuff.
If you drive around Boston in June, you see the streets and you see the state, both the mayor and the state everywhere endorsing homosexuality.
It's like that scene in The Sound of Music where the Germans have taken over Austria. And so the occupying power's flag is everywhere.
Right.
That's what it feels like we're an occupied power when you see those giant flags every June.
Right.
So tell me, you guys have really been battlers out there in the midst of this. Give me some words of encouragement. We know the bad news and the sense of being really in enemy territory. What have been some positive signs?
The former head of Massachusetts Family Institute, I'm the chairman, or now the vice chairman of the board, but the executive director, like you, basically used to say, Chris Mino, that the pendulum swings and it swings all the way over and it's going to swing all the way back. Well, that's the good news. The bad news is I'm not sure it will until we, the Christians, Catholics and evangelicals, and people with a similar worldview, take over and reform the academy. The academy being the colleges and universities. As long as our kids are being taught in high school and college and universities, all this nonsense, this pagan worldview, there's not a lot of good news in New England. It's so different when you go to Texas or if you go to the south of the Midwest, where there's actually still a Christian culture and Christian worldview.
Rob's exactly right. It's the colleges. And I'm with Rob, and I have to disagree with the late, great Chris Minu. It didn't swing all the way back.
No, he said it was going to, but it never did. Yeah,
it swung just in the last 2 years or so. It swung a little bit back, what we now refer to as a vibe shift, right? We have new leadership in Washington. This battle with the colleges is being engaged. But Rob's absolutely right that Massachusetts, southern New England, Massachusetts and Connecticut are very similar in this regard. We've got Harvard and Yale, and there is this very anti-Christian spirit of pride, of intellectual and other types of pride that hang over southern New England, and that spirit has to be broken if the pendulum if we can prove Chris Minu right and get the pendulum to swing all the way back.
Yeah. And one of the issues which we can go on for a long time, but one of the issues is the whole issue of marriage. And marriage itself in America is sort of being questioned whether that's good. Both alpha males, some kinds of men are saying this is not good, and all the feminists saying it's not good. It used to be that men and women would get married in their early 20s and have a bunch of kids. Now, average age of getting married is in the 30s.
Keeps going up.
And then people say they make an economic determination of whether it's good to have a kid or not. So that whole sense of the importance of marriage and the family is also nationwide going down there. We are at our banquet this year in October. We're having a guy named Brad Wilcox, who's a professor down in Virginia, and he wrote a book called Get Married, and it's a brilliant book with all the statistics about why marriage is good and economically, spiritually, in every possible way.
Well, but I mean, it seems in some ways we have hit rock bottom. I mean, for example, the replacement level in terms of children's way. But there's, for example, in the school system, I find more and more. For example, it may be a radical thing and it may be insufficient, but homeschooling is like people are taking they're taking their children back out of the corruption.
Yeah, and very important. Sorry to interrupt, but this is the good news.
Yeah.
The Supreme Court in June did a decision based on a case in Maryland, right? Mm-hmm. And the case in Maryland was a number of parents who wanted to opt out their kids in elementary school, and they were Muslims and Christians.
The Mahmoud case.
Mahmoud case, and the Supreme Court said, you know what? You should have let these parents opt their kids out. And we are, Massachusetts Family, taking this case, and we're going to school district after school district and making sure that the schools allow this, that this terribly execrable is the word I use, execrable, teaching of the sex ed in the schools is no longer enforced, and parents have to have their kids stay there. So that's good news. It really is.
And then the effort, which is a continuing effort, interestingly enough, fueled originally by anti-Catholicism, to not allow non-public schools to be funded by public education. There's no real logic behind it.
Do you know what's happened on that, by the way?
That's also shifting.
Well, an act in the great big beautiful bill, the one big beautiful bill, there's a part of it which says that individuals can send their money to foundations, get a tax break on it, and that those foundations can send the money to any family to go to religious schools of any kind. And it's an enormous thing. The biggest problem is to get it passed, they had to allow each governor of the state to say yes or no. So here we are in Massachusetts with Governor Healy, who will definitely be against it because the Mass Teachers Association is the strongest thing. Now, the good thing is we have two Republican candidates who are hammer and tongue going to go after this issue, and she is going to have to give up on this issue, I believe. But I don't know where in Connecticut.
Yeah, no, very similar. If I'm not mistaken, the way this works is if the governor does reject it, that means money could leave the state.
The money could leave the state.
Yeah, so that, I mean, it puts pressure on these Democrat governors. I'm sure we can expect the same thing from Ned Lamont. But the Family Institute, we were just in conversations today with the Connecticut Catholic Conference on this, and against these law firms that seem to advise every public school in the state. So we're going to be doing something with this.
But the big deal is the benefit to this. The benefit is to the minority community, the kids who are falling through the cracks in lousy schools, and they can go to Catholic schools and they can go to Protestant schools, they can use homeschooling, and this money can come to them from these foundations. So it's very exciting, very exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. And then I suppose as we get, I don't know how much time we have left, but I have to say as a priest, of course, a fundamental challenge is the conversion of the culture, and means the conversion of individuals. It can't be just forcing by law, whether even if we win by law, without the conversion of hearts.
A lot of it comes down to friendship, one-on-one.
And for example, the situation, I just know the Catholic Church, how many people support abortion? How many people support homosexual marriage who are supposedly practicing, committed, faithful Catholic? Well, we got a lot of work to do in the Catholic Church.
So one of the things that I've started is a newspaper, a news site in Boston called the New Boston Post. And the New Boston Post, I wanted to start because what is the most effective way to change the worldview of people? The media. I remember my parents being, strong conservatives and reading the New York Times for 20 years, and it changed their whole worldview. Pretty soon they were liberals, they were progressives. And, we need, to have media sources, which are powerful media sources, throughout the culture in Massachusetts and Connecticut to help those very individuals change their mind. Absolutely.
I can't help but remind you of your interview where all you talked about is all the magazines.
The magazines. They're why I'm sitting here with you right now. Yeah.
Right, and it's so true. And one last thing, more immediately, what's some hope for this coming year, or something you've been working on? I know you're tireless in 80, you're not retired. Moses started at 80, you're just starting.
Well, and we haven't, one of the things that to me is the most exciting thing is we started 20 years ago a school called Boston Trinity Academy. And every year it turns out 50 or 60, sometimes smaller classes, 40, 45, of wonderful students who go to great schools and who are largely Christian. And my hope is that this leadership over the years will indeed begin to turn the tide, of the culture. These are very bright kids. The school's very rigorous, and we have chapel, we have religious education every year, and my hope is that for the youth, the youth will come back to the church, will come back to begin to understand what Christian values are.
And it seems, and of course this could just be rose-colored glasses, but there does seems to be some rather intriguing, fascinating cultural shifts among young people around faith and religion, around values.
Particularly young men.
Yeah, and that seems to be shifting now. What's going on there? I'm not sure, but that's at
Are you
least
seeing this
encouraging.
now in Boston with the Catholic young men, or not? Is that more in other states?
I see it. I mean, look at it. It's anecdotal. I'm not
Sure.
I'm not a sociologist, not doing any analyses. But just that Thursday morning men's group where we're friends.
This is true.
We got a bunch of young
people.
Catholic.
The confession lines are long with young men. I mean, again, anecdotally, this is what I'm seeing.
Yeah, confession
many young men have gone over to the traditional Latin Mass. Some of them have gone from that onto like Eastern Catholic rites because they felt that it was more even traditional than the traditional Latin Mass. There's some wild, interesting stuff going on out there.
And of course, whatever else we do, we also have to believe in the Holy Spirit.
Sales of the Bible are up. Everyone's reading the Bible now.
Catholics are reading the Bible.
Catholics are reading the Bible.
He is the God of history. I mean, we believe that, the Ark of Justice.
There you go.
The Ark of Justice is long. It bends long, but bends towards justice.
For real this time. For real this time.
So why don't you give me one encouraging thing or one hope for this coming year for you?
Well, I would fall back on those Supreme Court rulings that you just heard, Mahmoud. We're going to be doing stuff like that. We're going to be leaning into that in Connecticut over the year ahead, going to these school districts, similar to you, making sure that parents know that they can opt their kids out, checking with the school systems. And adjacent to that, we have something called the Let Parents Parent Project, which is about telling schools that they cannot secretly transition children from one gender identity to the other without having parents be informed and be part of that process and be approved of it. That's going to be one of our biggest things in the year ahead. And I think the vibe shift aids us. I feel like aids us. I think we have the wind at our back.
And the other very good news, there's no question about this, is that the belief that males can become females and females can become males is 80% of the nation does not agree with that. It's an 80-20 issue. And the whole question of surgical mutilation of teenagers, only the really, really radical left believes in that. So the culture is with us on that whole journey.
These are positive signs. So there's for us old men, you're a little younger. It's nice to have a little hope at the end of your life.
There's a lot of hope.
Rather than the Ecclesiasticus, vanity of vanity. I was preaching out there the other day.
Nothing's new under the sun.
Someone said Solomon wrote his erotic poetry, Song of Solomon, when he was young. He wrote his Proverbs when he was middle-aged, and he wrote Ecclesiastes when he was an old man.
That's hilarious.
When he was
the rabbi said that. Anyway, we're out of time. Thank you so much. Maybe we could do stuff like this again.
We should. That was great, Peter.
Today was an experiment, but I think it succeeded. Just
it was great.
Having this.
Thank you, Rob.
So
well, thank you, and thank you, Jürgen.
And thank you for. Hope you've enjoyed this speed debate, conversation, dialogue, and particularly pay attention to Mass Family Institute. If you live here, Mass Institute, Family Institute, Connecticut, and their work, and support them and help them in changing our culture for Jesus Christ. And God bless.